No one in the courtroom took him seriously when he walked in with a dog on a leash, least of all the judge, who smirked openly. But after a single question to the dog, the judge's face lost all color, revealing a hidden truth that changed everything. Tension rippled through the packed courtroom, a hush undercut by shuffling papers and quiet murmurs. Everyone eyed the man in the center aisle, slim, unassuming, who, astonishingly, held a leash attached to a mid-sized brown mutt. Whispers darted among the spectators. Why bring a dog to a legal hearing? Was this some stunt? Presiding at the bench was Judge Hollister, famed for a sharp wit and no-nonsense approach. She tapped a pen against her notes, eyeing the man with open amusement. "Sir, this is a court of law," she said, a faint smirk shaping her lips. "Unless your dog's a certified service animal, you'll have to remove it." The man raised a hand calmly. "Your Honor," he began, voice trembling slightly, I need the dog here for a demonstration." Nervous chuckles flickered through the audience. Even the bailiff looked uncertain, glancing at Judge Hollister for direction. Judge Hollister leaned back in her seat, eyebrows arching. "A demonstration?" She made a show of flipping through the case file, scanning the lines. "I see nothing about a dog testifying." "What exactly are you trying to prove?" A quiet ripple of laughter spread in the rows behind him. The man swallowed, but his grip on the leash didn't falter. "Your Honor," he said carefully, "this dog is critical to the evidence in question. If I could just ask for a moment to show you." Snorts from the prosecution's table underscored the judge's skepticism. "Well," she sighed, "since this is a minor civil matter, I'll grant you 60 seconds. But if this is a joke, I'll hold you in contempt for wasting the court's time." A flutter of anxiety flickered across the man's face. "Thank you," he said, exhaling a shaky breath. Then he knelt beside the dog, murmuring something to it while the entire courtroom looked on, half expectant, half amused. Judge Hollister glanced at the clock, clearly impatient. But what happened next would knock the air from every pair of lungs in the room and wrench the confident smirk clean off the judge's face. In mere seconds, the man and his dog exposed something that no one imagined lay hidden behind the judge's polished facade, plunging the entire hearing into stunned silence. The man at the center of the courtroom took a steadying breath, bracing himself. He was aware that almost everyone there, from the jury box to the stern-faced bailiff, expected a spectacle, something laughable. Even the dog, a scruffy mongrel with a dusty coat, seemed out of place amid the polished shoes and suits. All eyes were on them, especially Judge Hollister's, who peered down from the bench with an expression of guarded derision. Slowly, the man rose, still holding the dog's leash. "Your Honor," he began, voice unsteady but earnest, "I know this must seem strange, but please ask the dog anything about your life, a question only you'd know the answer to." A ripple of confused laughter floated through the seats. A few onlookers rolled their eyes. The judge scowled, tapping her pen irritably on her notes. "This is a court, not a circus," she warned. "You have less than a minute to show me anything of value." A nervous hush settled over the spectators. The man swallowed. "My dog, Marley, can sense truths that we humans often ignore. Please, one question, something that if he reacts the right way, it'll prove my point." The prosecution's attorney stood, raising an objection before the judge even asked for it. "Your Honor, this is entirely irrelevant. We have no reason to indulge." Judge Hollister lifted a hand to silence the attorney, her curiosity unexpectedly piqued. "For once, I'll allow it," she said, voice clipped. "Go on, let's get this farce over with." The man nodded, then turned to the dog, kneeling again. He murmured softly into the animal's ear. The dog perked up, tail wagging in short, quick flicks. Then the man looked at Judge Hollister. "Ma'am, with all respect, think of something from your past, something you've never told anyone in this room, something that causes you regret." A startled hush swept the courtroom. The judge's cheeks twitched, as though she were about to bark out a dismissal, but an inexplicable tension flickered across her face. Perhaps a memory stirred, unbidden. She glanced at the onlookers. Were they expecting her to humor this? Clearing her throat, she flicked her gaze back to the man. "This is absurd," she muttered, "but fine." She closed her eyes for half a second, letting a single recollection pass through her mind. "All right," she snapped, opening her eyes. "I've thought of something." The man nodded at Marley. "Marley," he said gently, "tell me, is the judge remembering a time she hid evidence of her own wrongdoing?" The question hung in the air, insane in its audacity. Several people murmured, exchanging baffled glances. One bailiff's grip on his baton tightened. For a moment, Marley did nothing. He merely cocked his head, as if pondering. Then, without warning, the dog let out a long, low whine that vibrated through the silent room. Ears flattened, Marley lowered himself to the floor, tail tucked, letting out a single plaintive bark, a sound more forlorn than aggressive. Judge Hollister froze. The color drained from her face. She stammered, "What sort of parlor trick is this?" Her voice trembled enough that the front row noticed. An undercurrent of tension pulsed through the audience. The man, looking genuinely surprised at Marley's reaction, swallowed hard and kept his gaze on the judge. "Your Honor," he said softly, "Marley reacts this way when he senses guilt. Hidden guilt. He's done it with my clients before, showing me they're lying about certain details." The man glanced at the spectators, then back at the judge. "I suspected there might be a reason you laughed at me so quickly, ma'am. Something you didn't want to confront." The judge's breathing grew audible, shallow. Her pen slipped from her fingers, clattering onto the bench. "That's ridiculous," she snapped, though sweat beaded at her temple. "Dogs don't read minds." The man lowered his head in respect. "He doesn't read minds. He senses stress patterns, micro-expressions, secrets. I only asked if you were recalling something about withheld evidence, and, well," Marley whined. He let the statement hang, the implications swirling around them. A stunned hush held the room captive. The crowd shifted, collectively leaning forward. Judge Hollister's hands curled against the edges of her desk, knuckles white. The bailiff darted a concerned glance at her. She seemed on the verge of either exploding with anger or collapsing into self-revelation. Seconds stretched, each breath thick with expectation. Then the judge abruptly stood, her chair scraped loudly across the floor. "Recess," she declared, voice cracking. "I'll take a 15-minute recess. Clear the courtroom, bailiff." She all but fled, robe swishing as she exited in haste, leaving confusion and a mounting wave of speculation behind. As the doors banged shut behind her, an uproar of whispers erupted. The man with the dog didn't move, arms slack at his sides. Marley sat at his feet, ears drooping, as though sensing the wave of emotional shock that had just struck the entire court. For the second time in moments, a hush fell, and this time it was thick with the question no one dared voice out loud. What dark secret could make a judge go pale over one question, and a single dog's doleful whine? In the empty chambers behind the courtroom, Judge Hollister collapsed into a stiff-backed chair, hands trembling uncontrollably. Her breath came short, frantic gasps. Her usually composed face was ashen, her confidence unraveling at the seams. She had never felt so exposed, so vulnerable in her entire career. Outside, in the courtroom, murmurs built to a rising crescendo of speculation. Spectators gathered in knots, whispering fiercely, casting glances toward the door where Judge Hollister had disappeared. The man stood quietly, rubbing Marley's ears gently, as though reassuring the dog that he'd done well. A young clerk hurriedly brought the man and Marley a cup of water, hands trembling slightly. "What did your dog just uncover?" she whispered, glancing nervously at the courtroom door. The man shook his head slowly, uncertainty etched in every feature. "I'm not sure yet," he admitted quietly, "but Marley has never been wrong before." Inside the judge's chambers, Judge Hollister took a shuddering breath and pressed her palm against her forehead. Memories long buried surged up, fierce and merciless. That single question, had she ever hidden evidence of wrongdoing, had sliced to the heart of her deepest, darkest secret. A memory she had locked away, convinced no one would ever discover. It had happened 10 years earlier, in a trial when she was still climbing the ranks. A seemingly minor decision, easily justified at the time. A piece of evidence, critical evidence, hidden by accident at first, then deliberately ignored. A brief moment of weakness. One compromise in a career defined by rigid honesty, Yet that compromise haunted her every restless night afterward. With a trembling hand, Judge Hollister reached into her desk drawer, pulling out a small, yellowed photograph, one she'd looked at in secret countless times over the years. A teenage boy smiling awkwardly in front of a courthouse, his bright eyes full of youthful hope. A face that should never have faded from memory, because this boy had paid dearly for her secret. A knock on the door startled her. "Your Honor?" a timid voice asked softly. It was her assistant, June. "Are you all right?" Hollister shoved the photograph hastily back into the drawer, closing it firmly. She steadied her breathing before answering, voice shaking only slightly. "I'm fine, June. Just give me a moment." But June persisted, anxiety coloring her voice. "Ma'am, the people outside, they're demanding an explanation. They won't leave. They're saying this dog exposed something. Do you need me to call someone?" "No," Judge Hollister replied sharply, voice rising more than she intended. She exhaled slowly, forcing calm into her tone. "No. Tell them court will resume shortly. I'll address them personally." She heard June's footsteps retreat quickly down the hall, leaving her alone once more. Sitting rigid in her chair, Judge Hollister knew she was facing the most pivotal choice of her life: deny and hide once again, or face the truth she had hidden so carefully. Her eyes stung with tears she hadn't allowed herself in a decade, a wrenching surge of guilt, shame, and, unexpectedly, relief. Perhaps this was her chance to finally make amends for the grave mistake she'd committed. She stood slowly, smoothing the wrinkles from her robes, heart still pounding fiercely. There was no running from this anymore. The dog had uncovered what no person ever had, a hidden wound that had quietly festered within her, corrupting her own view of justice. Back in the courtroom, people stirred as the doors reopened, their gazes snapping toward Judge Hollister as she re-entered. Her face was composed but still pale, her eyes tired yet resolute. She approached her bench deliberately, and silence fell like a heavy cloak over the room. Even Marley sat quietly, eyes fixed on the judge, ears alert. Clearing her throat, she spoke in a quiet, heavy voice that carried clearly to the farthest reaches of the room. "I owe this court an explanation." She glanced briefly at the man and Marley, acknowledgement flickering across her expression. "Years ago, I withheld evidence that would have exonerated a defendant, a young man wrongly accused. It was a mistake born of ambition, arrogance, and fear. A mistake I deeply regret." Gasps rippled through the audience. The prosecution attorney stared open-mouthed. Even Marley raised his head attentively. Judge Hollister continued, voice barely steady. "I never thought it would come to light. But today, a simple dog reminded me what truth really means." She met Marley's calm, knowing eyes, a silent gratitude exchanged between them. "I'll submit myself to the judicial review immediately. Justice demands accountability from all of us." She swallowed hard, gripping the bench to steady herself, looking out over the stunned courtroom with newfound clarity. "And today, justice begins with me." A stunned silence stretched through the courtroom, broken only by Marley's quiet whine, almost as if he understood the magnitude of the moment. Judge Hollister lowered her head briefly, gathering her strength for whatever awaited next. The truth was out, brought forth by the most unlikely witness, a humble dog whose presence had initially drawn laughter, but ultimately forced an entire courtroom to confront its deepest, most hidden truths. In the stunned courtroom, silence echoed like thunder. Judge Hollister's shocking admission still reverberated in everyone's ears. Slowly, murmurs began to rise, growing into a wave of confusion and astonishment. Faces turned toward the man and his dog, Marley, who sat quietly, oblivious to the turmoil they'd unleashed. The judge straightened herself, pale yet determined, and gestured to her bailiff. "Please notify the ethics committee immediately. Arrange for my replacement. I'll be stepping down until this matter is investigated fully." Her voice cracked slightly, but the resolve was clear. Judge Hollister then turned to face the man with Marley, her gaze solemn, humbled. "I owe you an apology," she said gently. "When you entered this court, I laughed. I mocked your sincerity. But today, your dog taught us all a lesson in humility and justice." The man shifted uncomfortably, glancing down at Marley before meeting her eyes. "Thank you, Your Honor," he responded softly. "But it's Marley who deserves your gratitude. He senses when people carry secrets. He only wants honesty." Marley wagged his tail slightly, sensing a change in atmosphere. The judge stepped down from the bench, her movements slow, dignified yet weary. As she exited through a side door, conversations exploded in the gallery, frantic whispers turning to incredulous exclamations. Reporters scribbled notes furiously, eager to capture every detail. Within hours, the news had spread throughout the town. Social media buzzed with the headline, "Judge exposed by truth-telling dog in court." Video clips went viral and speculation ran wild. Who was this mysterious man, and how had he trained a dog to sense guilt? Back at his modest apartment that evening, the man, whose name was Thomas, sat quietly with Marley at his feet, watching their small television flicker with coverage of the courtroom drama. Marley, blissfully unaware of his newfound fame, curled comfortably near Thomas's chair, enjoying a treat. Thomas patted the dog's scruffy fur lovingly. "You did it again, buddy," he murmured softly. Marley lifted his head briefly, wagging slightly, then returned contentedly to his treat. Thomas exhaled slowly, contemplating how quickly life had changed. He'd never wanted the spotlight, nor to embarrass the judge. He'd simply wished to prove Marley's unique talent was real, genuine, and important. His phone buzzed persistently with messages, some praising his bravery, others questioning Marley's abilities. But the message that stood out most prominently was from an unfamiliar number. Thomas hesitated briefly, then opened it. "Mr. Thomas Harris, this is attorney Julia Mayfield. I represent Jacob Brennan, the young man wrongfully convicted due to Judge Hollister's actions. We'd like to meet with you immediately. Marley might hold the key to finally clearing Jacob's name." Thomas's pulse quickened as he reread the text. Marley nudged his leg softly, sensing his tension. Looking down, Thomas smiled faintly. "Seems like our work isn't done yet, Marley," he whispered. Early the next morning, Thomas and Marley arrived at Attorney Mayfield's small, bustling law office. Julia, a poised, intelligent woman with sharp eyes, greeted them warmly. "Mr. Harris, Marley," she said earnestly, "thank you for coming so quickly." She led them to a private conference room, motioning to a seat. "Jacob Brennan has spent the past decade incarcerated, falsely accused due to withheld evidence. Your dog might provide the credibility we need to get a new hearing." Thomas hesitated. "What exactly do you want Marley to do?" Julia sat opposite him, fingers clasped tightly. "Marley has demonstrated an extraordinary sensitivity to truth. If he can reliably identify falsehoods or concealed information, we could present his testimony as supportive evidence in a hearing. His credibility might pressure the court to review Jacob's conviction." Thomas glanced uncertainly at Marley. "He's never done anything quite that formal. Usually, it's more informal, like what you saw in the courtroom." Julia nodded patiently. "I understand, but it's clear Marley has a remarkable gift. Imagine the lives that could be changed if we succeed, starting with Jacob's." Thomas took a long breath, considering. Marley looked up expectantly, as if waiting for Thomas's answer. Finally, he spoke quietly, decisively. "All right, we'll help." Julia's face broke into a relieved smile. "Thank you," she breathed. "I'll arrange a meeting with Jacob at the prison. Let's see how Marley responds to him." Within days, arrangements were made, and Thomas found himself sitting nervously across from Jacob Brennan, now in his late 20s, hardened by prison life, but still carrying a spark of youthful innocence in his eyes. Jacob's gaze softened when he saw Marley. Thomas approached slowly. "Jacob, I'm Thomas. This is Marley. He senses truths. Do you mind if he comes closer?" Jacob shrugged, cautious but hopeful. "Sure." Marley approached gently, sniffing curiously. He paused, then wagged his tail enthusiastically, gently placing a paw on Jacob's knee, a gesture Thomas knew well. Marley only acted this way around those he sensed were genuine, honest souls. Jacob's eyes glistened with sudden emotion. "He trusts me." Thomas nodded firmly, moved by Marley's reaction. "Marley believes you," he said quietly. "And now so do I." Back in Julia's office, Thomas conveyed Marley's reaction. Julia nodded, eyes intense. "We'll petition immediately for a retrial. Marley's credibility could sway the court, especially after Judge Hollister's admission." Thomas felt a new sense of purpose ignite. Marley had always been special, but now he saw clearly what Marley's gift meant: justice, truth, redemption. This journey, sparked by one judge's mocking laughter and ended with her shocking confession, had only just begun. Marley, the dog dismissed as a circus act, was now their strongest hope, an unexpected hero whose honesty might free an innocent man and rewrite the very meaning of justice in their town. The days leading up to the retrial became a whirlwind of preparation, tension, and hope. Julia Mayfield worked tirelessly, gathering testimonies and evidence. But it was clear that Marley's role would be pivotal in convincing a skeptical court to reopen Jacob Brennan's case. Thomas found himself thrust into a limelight he never sought, with journalists constantly reaching out, eager to learn more about the truth-telling dog. On a chilly Wednesday morning, Thomas stood nervously outside the courthouse. Marley pressed calmly against his leg. Camera crews and curious onlookers had already assembled, their murmurs blending into a chaotic backdrop. Julia appeared at his side, composed but clearly tense. "This won't be easy," she warned quietly. "The prosecution will try to discredit Marley. But remember, just stay calm, answer honestly, and let Marley's actions speak for themselves." Thomas nodded stiffly. Marley wagged his tail gently, as though sensing the weight of the moment. Together, they climbed the steps into the courthouse. The same building, Thomas realized, where Marley had first stunned the entire courtroom into silence by exposing Judge Hollister's secret. Inside, the courtroom buzzed with expectation. Jacob Brennan sat beside Julia at the defense table, wearing a borrowed suit slightly too large for his lean frame. His eyes, darkened by years behind bars, briefly brightened as he saw Marley enter. Thomas gave him a reassuring nod, hoping desperately Marley could provide the critical support needed. "All rise," called the bailiff as the new judge, Judge Marcus Bailey, a well-respected veteran, entered and took his seat. He eyed Marley skeptically, clearly wary after the widely publicized Hollister incident. After formalities, Julia stood to address the court. "Your Honor, we present Marley as an expert witness due to his demonstrated ability to sense dishonesty and hidden truths. This unique skill was proven clearly in Judge Hollister's courtroom. We argue that Marley's reactions constitute reliable evidence." Judge Bailey leaned forward slightly. "You're asking me to trust the instincts of an animal to decide matters of human justice." His voice, though courteous, held clear skepticism. Julia took a measured breath. "Yes, Your Honor. Marley's actions triggered Judge Hollister's confession, uncovering crucial hidden information that directly impacted this case. Marley is no ordinary animal." The prosecution rose swiftly, a young attorney named Dennis Franklin, sharp and ambitious. "Your Honor, with all due respect, this claim is preposterous. Are we really expected to believe a dog has supernatural powers?" Julia countered immediately. "Not supernatural, scientifically explainable. Marley can detect stress responses, subtle micro-expressions, elevated heart rates associated with dishonesty. Numerous studies validate that dogs can sense emotions more acutely than humans." Judge Bailey considered briefly before deciding, "Very well, I will allow limited questioning to establish this dog's credibility. Proceed." Thomas was sworn in first, voice steady, despite the anxiety fluttering in his stomach. "Marley has always been sensitive to human emotions. I discovered this ability when he accurately identified people hiding something. Lies, anxieties, even medical conditions." Julia asked calmly, "Can you describe Marley's reaction when someone is dishonest?" "Yes," Thomas said confidently. "He lowers his ears, whines, and sometimes growls softly. When someone is honest, he behaves differently, calm, relaxed, affectionate." Dennis Franklin stood abruptly, pacing as he addressed Thomas sharply. "Can Marley tell you specifics like what exactly someone is hiding?" Thomas shook his head firmly. "No. Marley senses stress and deception, but he can't read minds. He just knows when something's hidden." Dennis seized on this point, pressing further. "Then how can Marley's reactions truly be admissible evidence?" Thomas held firm, because Marley has never once been wrong. He's accurately identified deceit in every test, every demonstration, including Judge Hollister, who admitted her own guilt publicly. A ripple of whispers passed through the gallery. Even Judge Bailey's expression shifted slightly, intrigued despite himself. Dennis reluctantly sat back down, scowling. Julia stood again, calling Jacob Brennan to testify next. Marley perked up visibly as Jacob spoke quietly, honestly detailing his wrongful conviction. When asked pointed questions by Julia about the hidden evidence, Jacob's voice trembled, but he never hesitated. Throughout Jacob's testimony, Marley sat quietly, alert yet relaxed, signaling truthfulness. When Dennis attempted aggressive cross-examination, insinuating Jacob was merely exploiting the situation, Marley growled quietly, ears flattened, signaling a sharp recognition of hostility and manipulation. Judge Bailey leaned forward slightly, intrigued. "That's enough," he interrupted Dennis, who sat back, slightly embarrassed. The judge then addressed Julia directly. "I admit this is unconventional, but Marley's reactions have aligned consistently with known truths and established facts. I've seen enough to at least consider reopening Jacob Brennan's conviction." Jacob's shoulders sagged in relief. Thomas exhaled slowly, exchanging a grateful glance with Julia. Marley wagged gently, sensing the shift in tension. But before they could fully celebrate, the courtroom doors swung open sharply, and a bailiff hurried forward urgently, handing a folded note to Judge Bailey. Reading it quickly, Judge Bailey's eyebrows furrowed deeply. He glanced up, voice taut. "We have unexpected news. Judge Hollister herself has requested permission to speak. She has information vital to this hearing." A stunned silence enveloped the courtroom. Marley's ears pricked sharply, his posture tensing as if he sensed another wave of truths and revelations approaching. Thomas glanced nervously at Julia. Whatever Judge Hollister intended to share could either seal their victory or shatter everything they'd built. The doors creaked open again, and Judge Hollister entered quietly, dressed plainly, eyes downcast but resolute. She stepped forward, taking a slow breath. Her next words, everyone realized, would either liberate Jacob Brennan at last, or doom him to years more behind bars. Judge Hollister stood before the hushed courtroom, dressed simply, stripped of her usual judicial robes and authority. Yet, despite her humbled appearance, a renewed dignity shone through, a dignity born of confronting her own guilt head-on. Her eyes briefly met Jacob Brennan's, a moment of sorrow and remorse passing silently between them. Then she faced Judge Bailey, steadying herself to speak. "Your Honor," she began, her voice soft but clear, carrying an unmistakable sincerity. "I'm here voluntarily today, without legal counsel or protection. I owe this court, this man, complete honesty." She nodded gently toward Jacob Brennan, who watched her intently, breath held tight. Judge Bailey inclined his head slowly. "Proceed, Ms. Hollister." She swallowed hard, gathering strength. 10 years ago, during Jacob Brennan's trial, I was still relatively new on the bench. Ambitious, eager to build a reputation for toughness and efficiency, but ambition blinded me. During that trial, evidence emerged that could have cleared Jacob, specifically, testimony proving he wasn't at the crime scene. In a moment of weakness, fearing public backlash and embarrassment over my initial rulings, I chose to ignore this new evidence, concealing it quietly to avoid scrutiny. Gasps rippled through the gallery. Jacob's head dropped, tears forming silently, fists clenched with anguish and disbelief. Judge Hollister's voice shook slightly. "My decision cost an innocent young man his freedom. Not a day has passed that I haven't been haunted by guilt and shame." She raised her eyes to Jacob, pain clearly etched into her features. "Jacob, I can never undo what I've done. But today, I stand here to say clearly, you are innocent. You were never guilty, and you've paid dearly for my mistake." Jacob's shoulders shook slightly, emotion flooding him. Beside him, Julia placed a comforting hand on his arm, her eyes fierce with empathy and resolve. Judge Bailey spoke calmly, carefully. "Ms. Hollister, do you have proof of this concealed evidence?" Judge Hollister reached into her pocket, pulling out a small flash drive. I kept meticulous records of my cases. On this drive, you'll find recordings and notes confirming my wrongdoing, evidence I withheld, details of witnesses I deliberately ignored. Everything is here. She placed it solemnly into the bailiff's outstretched hand. Use it to restore justice. Judge Bailey took a deep breath, absorbing the magnitude of what he'd just witnessed. Court will take a brief recess while I review this new evidence. Everyone remain available. Ms. Hollister, please wait here. As Judge Bailey left the bench, the courtroom erupted into murmurs. Journalists raced outside, frantically reporting the astonishing turn of events. Jacob slumped slightly, overwhelmed by hope and disbelief. Julia leaned over, whispering firmly, "We're almost there, Jacob, hold on." Meanwhile, Thomas and Marley sat quietly, waiting. Marley rested his head on Thomas's knee, sensing his tension. Thomas patted him softly, whispering, "Good job, buddy. You've changed everything." Judge Hollister approached slowly, sitting beside Thomas, eyes downcast. Marley lifted his head briefly, giving her a gentle nuzzle, a simple gesture of forgiveness and understanding. The former judge sighed softly, eyes glistening. "You have an extraordinary dog," she said quietly. "I owe both of you everything." Thomas shook his head gently. "You did the hardest part yourself, facing your past. Marley just gave you a reason." After nearly an hour, Judge Bailey returned, his expression somber yet resolute. "I've carefully reviewed the evidence provided by Ms. Hollister," he began, voice steady. "It fully corroborates her admission. Jacob Brennan was indeed wrongly convicted. The withheld testimony conclusively establishes his innocence. Effective immediately, I'm overturning Mr. Brennan's conviction and ordering his immediate release." Cheers exploded throughout the courtroom. Jacob collapsed into sobs of relief, overcome with emotion. Julia embraced him tightly, eyes bright with joy. Thomas exhaled shakily, sharing a warm glance with Marley, who wagged his tail, sensing the joyful relief around him. Judge Bailey continued, raising a hand gently to quiet the celebration. "Additionally, I will recommend disciplinary review for Ms. Hollister's prior misconduct. Yet today, her voluntary honesty shows remarkable courage, deserving acknowledgement." Jacob, recovering slightly, turned toward Judge Hollister, face full of conflicted emotions. She stepped closer, voice trembling. "Jacob, I can never give back the years you lost, but I will do everything I can to help you rebuild. I'm profoundly sorry." Jacob met her gaze, pain evident but tempered by relief and gratitude. "You came forward," he whispered. "It matters." Marley watched intently, ears perked up, tail wagging gently, as if understanding the depth of healing unfolding. Thomas, emotional, scratched Marley's ears lovingly. The courtroom slowly emptied, yet the weight of what occurred remained palpable. Outside the courthouse, Jacob embraced his family, weeping openly, breathing in freedom for the first time in a decade. Thomas and Marley stood quietly to one side, content to let Jacob have this moment. Soon, Jacob turned, approaching them slowly, a tentative smile lighting his face. He knelt down to Marley, stroking his fur gently. "You're an amazing dog, Marley," Jacob whispered softly, voice thick with emotion. Marley nuzzled him affectionately, recognizing a kindred spirit. Jacob looked up at Thomas, gratitude shining. "I don't know how I'll ever thank you." Thomas shook his head gently, smiling warmly. "You don't have to. Seeing you free is all we wanted." Julia approached then, smiling. "This will go down in history. The case overturned by Marley, the truth-telling dog." Thomas chuckled softly, glancing at Marley fondly. "He deserves the credit, not me." Marley barked cheerfully, drawing laughter from the gathering group. The skies seemed brighter, the air sweeter, a fresh start filled with hope. But even as joy radiated around them, Thomas knew Marley's work was only beginning. Because justice, they discovered, often lay hidden behind secrets and silence. Marley had proven the extraordinary power of truth, changing lives with a simple gesture of honesty. Little did they realize that this would be just the beginning of Marley's remarkable journey. One dog's quest for truth, sparking a wave of hope and redemption, forever reshaping how justice was served in their community. In the weeks following Jacob Brennan's release, the story captivated the nation. Headlines celebrated Marley, the truth-telling dog, and Thomas found himself suddenly overwhelmed by a surge of attention. Requests poured in from across the country, families seeking justice, attorneys desperate to overturn wrongful convictions, even law enforcement agencies intrigued by Marley's unique abilities. Thomas knew their quiet, private life was forever changed, yet he felt a profound sense of responsibility to use Marley's gift wisely. Jacob, adjusting to life after prison, quickly became a close friend. His gentle humor and quiet resilience amazed Thomas, who frequently visited him alongside Marley. One afternoon, while sitting together in Jacob's family's modest home, Jacob asked thoughtfully, "Have you ever considered using Marley's gift regularly? Think of how many innocent people could be freed." Thomas glanced at Marley, who lay relaxed at his feet, and nodded slowly. "Honestly, Jacob, I never intended any of this. Marley was just my dog, my companion. But after seeing what happened with you, maybe we could make a real difference." Jacob leaned forward eagerly. "We could help others trapped by false convictions, people like me, who never had anyone fighting for them. You and Marley could change their lives." Moved by Jacob's sincerity, Thomas felt a surge of determination. With Marley's wagging tail signaling support, the decision was clear. They would use Marley's talent to help more people like Jacob. Soon after, with Julia Mayfield's help, Thomas and Jacob founded the Marley Project, a non-profit organization dedicated to advocating for the wrongly accused. News of their new endeavor spread quickly. Generous donations flowed in from supporters, inspired by Marley's story. Lawyers volunteered pro bono work, researchers offered their expertise, and letters from hopeful prisoners arrived daily, desperate for Marley's help. Marley's first official case for the project involved a woman named Olivia Carter, serving life for a crime she insisted she hadn't committed. Olivia had spent 15 years behind bars, consistently claiming innocence, despite overwhelming evidence against her. Thomas, Julia, and Marley traveled to meet her in prison, hoping Marley's sensitivity could reveal hidden truths. Inside the prison's stark visiting room, Olivia appeared, weary yet composed, face etched with lines of long-held despair. As she approached, Marley sat calmly, tail swishing gently, a clear signal of peace and trust. Olivia hesitated briefly, wary after years of disappointment, before reaching out to gently stroke Marley's fur. Marley's affectionate nuzzle immediately relaxed her, tears filling her eyes. "He trusts me," she whispered incredulously. Thomas smiled gently. "Marley senses honesty. You're telling the truth, Olivia." She covered her face briefly, overwhelmed. "No one has believed me for so long. I'd almost given up hope." Julia took careful notes, preparing Olivia's petition for retrial. This case would test the limits of Marley's abilities and the legal system's willingness to accept him as a credible witness. Unlike Jacob's situation, Olivia's conviction involved complicated forensics and witnesses who firmly stood by their testimony. Yet Marley's conviction in her honesty gave Thomas renewed confidence. Meanwhile, Judge Hollister, undergoing disciplinary review, reached out to Thomas privately, offering her help behind the scenes. "My career is over," she acknowledged humbly, "but I can still do good. Let me help Olivia's case. I owe it to her and others I wronged through my arrogance." Her sincere remorse convinced Thomas to accept. Together, they meticulously reviewed Olivia's trial records, uncovering overlooked details, biased witness statements, and procedural errors. Judge Hollister's legal experience proved invaluable, turning her guilt into action and redemption. The day of Olivia's retrial arrived swiftly. The courtroom overflowed with journalists and curious spectators. Thomas sat beside Marley, his heart pounding nervously. Judge Bailey, now fully supportive of Marley's abilities after Jacob's case, presided again. Olivia, pale and tense, watched anxiously from the defense table. Julia presented Marley's behavior around Olivia as supportive evidence, bolstered by meticulous legal research. The prosecution argued fiercely against using an animal as a credible witness. But the turning point came when Judge Hollister testified voluntarily, admitting her own wrongful rulings had impacted Olivia's original trial, highlighting clear procedural violations and bias. Throughout the hearing, Marley remained calm and affectionate toward Olivia, visibly agitated only during testimony from prosecution witnesses whose inconsistency and nervousness suggested hidden truths. Thomas spoke clearly, reinforcing Marley's flawless record in recognizing deceit. Finally, after hours of testimony, Judge Bailey leaned forward gravely. The evidence and testimonies presented today raise significant doubts about Olivia Carter's conviction. Marley's behavior, though unconventional, has repeatedly proven trustworthy. Combined with substantial procedural violations outlined by Mrs. Hollister, I find grounds to vacate Olivia Carter's conviction. "Olivia, you are to be released immediately." Gasps of joy echoed in the courtroom. Olivia sobbed openly. Clutching Julia's arm in gratitude, Thomas exhaled shakily, joy swelling. Marley barked excitedly, tail wagging vigorously, mirroring the celebration around him. Outside the courthouse, Olivia stepped into freedom for the first time in 15 years, overwhelmed and joyful. Marley bounded toward her, greeting her warmly. She knelt, embracing Marley gently, weeping tears of relief. "Thank you," she whispered into Marley's fur, voice choked with emotion. Reporters captured the moment, images quickly circulating, capturing hearts worldwide. Marley's role in freeing another innocent prisoner reinforced his reputation, lending more credibility and influence to the Marley Project. Yet, amid this newfound acclaim, Thomas knew Marley's gift was not limitless. Marley was aging, his energy finite, and Thomas felt protective of his beloved companion. But each time they watched someone like Olivia or Jacob reunite with loved ones, reclaiming lives stolen by injustice, Thomas understood Marley's true legacy wasn't fame. It was restoring hope, dignity, and freedom. Standing beside Marley outside that courthouse, Thomas resolved to continue their mission, mindful that each truth Marley uncovered meant more lives changed, more families reunited. Justice, he'd discovered, sometimes wore unexpected forms, like a gentle, truth-sensing dog who quietly restored faith in a broken system. As the Marley Project grew in prominence, so did the pressures on Thomas and Marley. Requests came in constantly, families desperate for justice, lawyers needing breakthroughs, and prisoners hoping Marley could uncover their truths. Yet Thomas knew Marley was no longer the energetic pup he'd once been. The beloved dog moved more slowly, resting longer after each case, his expressive eyes now flecked with grey. One evening, after a particularly draining week of hearings and meetings, Thomas sat quietly on his porch, watching Marley rest peacefully at his feet. Marley's gentle breaths rose and fell rhythmically, his loyal presence providing comfort as always. Yet Thomas felt an ache of concern deep in his chest. Marley had given so much already. How much more could Thomas fairly ask? The soft sound of footsteps interrupted his thoughts. Jacob approached quietly, sitting down beside Thomas. "How's Marley holding up?" Jacob asked gently, sensing his friend's worries. Thomas sighed, patting Marley's head softly. "He's tired, Jacob. I can see it, but people still need him. Every letter we get, each story of someone trapped unjustly, it breaks my heart knowing Marley can't help everyone." Jacob nodded thoughtfully, gazing at Marley with deep gratitude. "I know firsthand the miracles Marley's capable of. But you also have to protect him. Marley saved my life, now we must protect his—" Thomas glanced toward Jacob, a decision forming slowly in his mind. "I think it's time we slow down. Marley deserves rest." Jacob placed a comforting hand on Thomas's shoulder. "Maybe it's time the Marley Project expanded beyond Marley himself. His legacy is bigger than just one dog. He proved that animals can sense truths humans miss. Perhaps Marley could train other dogs, and your methods could become standard practice for innocence projects everywhere." The idea struck Thomas profoundly. Marley, sensing the conversation's emotional weight, lifted his head, gazing up at Thomas as though approving of Jacob's suggestion. Thomas smiled softly, scratching Marley's ears. "What do you think, Marley? Ready to teach some younger pups?" Marley wagged gently, ears perking slightly as if in agreement. Thomas chuckled warmly. Looks like we have Marley's blessing. Within weeks, Thomas, Jacob, and Julia set plans in motion. Marley took on a gentle mentor role, helping guide younger dogs through subtle signals of deceit and honesty. Local shelters eagerly partnered with the Marley Project, providing promising candidates, dogs naturally sensitive, observant, and compassionate. Marley seemed revitalized by the new role, warmly nurturing pups with patient affection. Thomas watched proudly, comforted that Marley's extraordinary gift would continue even beyond Marley's own ability to directly intervene. Their first official trainee was an intelligent, lively Labrador named Scout. Marley immediately bonded with Scout, patiently guiding him through exercises. Scout showed remarkable aptitude, quickly recognizing stress and subtle signals in humans, just as Marley had. The Marley Project soon garnered national attention again, but this time not solely focused on Marley himself. The emphasis was on their groundbreaking work demonstrating how dogs could assist in judicial processes. Training programs expanded nationwide, inspired by Marley's story, and Thomas found himself frequently traveling, sharing Marley's remarkable methods with innocence projects and law enforcement agencies across the country. In time, Marley's public appearances became fewer, though he remained adored by supporters worldwide. Thomas closely guarded Marley's health, ensuring he had comfort, rest, and plenty of affection. Marley still joined Thomas at the Marley Project's offices regularly, greeting visitors warmly and mentoring Scout and other pups as his health permitted. One memorable afternoon, Thomas and Marley returned to the courthouse where their extraordinary journey began. Marley walked slowly but proudly beside Thomas, visiting the familiar courtroom where he'd first challenged Judge Hollister's hidden truths. The room was quiet now, empty except for Thomas, Marley, and Jacob. Thomas sat gently beside Marley, stroking his fur. "Do you remember that day, Marley? You changed everything here?" Marley wagged gently, pressing close against Thomas's leg. Jacob smiled softly, overcome with gratitude. "Because of you, Marley, I'm standing here a free man. Thank you for everything." Marley gazed up warmly, eyes full of trust and devotion. Thomas hugged him softly, emotion swelling. Marley had indeed changed countless lives, Jacob's, Olivia's, Judge Hollister's, and so many others whose stories of freedom and redemption became intertwined with Marley's legacy. Yet Thomas knew Marley's greatest gift wasn't fame or acclaim. It was hope. Marley reminded everyone he met that justice wasn't merely law and logic. It was compassion, honesty, and courage to face truths that often seemed too painful or inconvenient. Marley embodied justice at its most profound, a gentle guardian of truth, quietly inspiring humans to be better. As they left the courthouse together, Thomas glanced down, noticing Marley looking peacefully satisfied, content and fulfilled. Their work wasn't over, but it was changing, evolving into a broader mission. Marley's impact had grown far beyond one dog's lifetime. His legacy lived in every dog trained, every prisoner freed, and every family reunited through their project. That evening, beneath a warm sunset, Thomas sat again on their porch, Marley beside him, Scout now curled nearby, learning from his mentor's quiet strength. Marley leaned against Thomas, eyes drifting closed in serene contentment. Thomas felt profound gratitude for Marley's unwavering loyalty, for the countless lives changed, and for the humble, courageous dog who had transformed justice itself. He whispered softly, "Rest easy, Marley. You've done more than anyone could have imagined." Marley sighed gently, relaxed and at peace, knowing he had fulfilled a remarkable purpose. And as twilight deepened, Thomas knew their story was far from over. Marley's legacy had planted seeds of hope, courage, and truthfulness that would bloom for generations. Justice had a new face, warm eyes, and gentle paws. And through Marley's quiet strength, it had finally learned how to heal. As Marley eased gracefully into retirement, Scout stepped eagerly into his role, embodying Marley's quiet strength and perceptive intuition. The Marley Project expanded its reach, now training a growing team of truth-sensitive dogs, each gifted in identifying human deceit and authenticity. Marley's legacy was secure, yet Thomas knew the hardest part was still ahead, letting Marley rest, allowing him the dignity of age and comfort. One quiet evening, Thomas and Marley walked slowly along the gentle trails near their home. The sun painted soft golden streaks across the horizon, birds chirping gently around them. Marley paused occasionally, sniffing familiar scents, moving at his own calm pace. Thomas watched his beloved friend, keenly aware their time together was growing shorter. Returning home, Thomas found Jacob waiting on the porch, holding a small wooden box. Marley wagged warmly in greeting. Jacob smiled softly, nodding toward the box. "Thomas, this is something I've wanted to give you both for a long time." Thomas opened it carefully, revealing a beautifully carved medal engraved simply, "Marley, Guardian of Truth." Thomas blinked back emotion. "Jacob, this is beautiful." Jacob gently knelt, slipping the medal softly around Marley's neck. Marley sat patiently, gazing warmly at Jacob as though understanding the deep meaning of the gesture. Jacob's voice shook slightly as he spoke softly to Marley. "You gave me my life back. We can never repay that, but this is our way of honoring you forever." Thomas clasped Jacob's shoulder gratefully. Marley wore the medal proudly, his gentle eyes calm, dignified. Soon after, a major invitation arrived. The governor requested Marley and Thomas to attend a state gala, recognizing Marley's profound contributions to justice. Thomas hesitated, worried the stress might be too much for Marley. Yet sensing Marley's eagerness at the attention, Thomas accepted reluctantly. The evening of the gala, Marley arrived at the grand hall adorned in his special medal, greeted warmly by officials and lawyers, former prisoners Marley had helped free, and countless supporters. Thomas remained close, carefully monitoring Marley's energy, proud of his dear companion receiving long overdue recognition. Midway through the ceremony, an emotional surprise unfolded. Judge Hollister, now retired but devotedly volunteering to support wrongful conviction cases, stood to address the crowd. Her voice carried humility, sincerity, and deep emotion. "I stand before you as someone who failed justice gravely," she confessed openly, eyes shimmering with tears. Yet through Marley's compassion, truth prevailed, and redemption was possible. He taught us that justice must never become cold, arrogant, or blind to human suffering. She gazed at Marley fondly. "Thank you, Marley, for showing us that truth, courage, and forgiveness are justice's truest forms." Marley wagged softly, acknowledging the heartfelt tribute. The room filled with applause, sincere gratitude, and reverence for Marley's life-changing impact. After the ceremony, Marley seemed deeply content, warmly greeting familiar faces from past cases, Jacob, Olivia, Judge Hollister, and countless others who owed their freedom to his gentle truthfulness. Thomas noticed Marley tiring, gently signaling it was time to rest. Back home, in the quiet stillness of the porch, Marley curled contentedly beside Thomas, the medal gleaming softly in the moonlight. Thomas stroked Marley's fur tenderly, feeling the warmth, comfort, and unconditional love his loyal friend had always provided. Over the next few months, Marley slowed more noticeably, sleeping longer, walking shorter distances. Thomas cared for him gently, determined Marley would enjoy peace and dignity in his final days. Jacob, Julia, Olivia, and others visited frequently, showering Marley with affection, love, and gratitude. One quiet afternoon, Thomas found Marley lying peacefully beneath their favorite oak tree. Marley's eyes opened slightly as Thomas approached, tail gently wagging. Thomas knelt beside him, lovingly stroking his fur. Marley's breathing slowed, peaceful and serene, surrounded by love. "Rest now, Marley," Thomas whispered softly, voice thick with emotion. "You changed so many lives. You taught us all how to seek truth and justice. I love you, buddy." Marley gazed up gently, eyes filled with deep trust and devotion. Thomas sat quietly, cradling Marley's head softly in his lap, feeling Marley's final gentle breaths, grateful for the extraordinary journey they had shared. Days later, a memorial was held, attended by hundreds whose lives Marley had touched. They gathered beneath Marley's favorite tree, sharing emotional stories of how Marley's compassion and intuition changed their lives. Thomas spoke simply, lovingly, voice quivering. "Marley taught us something crucial. Justice requires more than evidence or facts alone. It demands empathy, courage, and compassion, qualities Marley embodied every day. As the memorial ended, Jacob approached Thomas gently, carrying Scout's leash. "Marley's legacy lives on," Jacob said warmly. Scout wagged earnestly, sensing the moment's solemnity yet ready to carry Marley's mission forward. Thomas nodded gratefully, kneeling to stroke Scout gently. "We'll honor Marley's memory every day through our work," he promised softly. In the months following Marley's passing, Thomas, Scout, Jacob, Julia, and the Marley Project continued changing countless lives, freeing wrongfully imprisoned individuals nationwide. Marley's groundbreaking legacy inspired justice reforms, reshaped legal practices, and sparked a movement advocating deeper compassion within the judicial system. But Marley's greatest impact wasn't just public, it was deeply personal. He taught Thomas the power of quiet courage, unwavering loyalty, and gentle truthfulness. Marley's extraordinary life had ended peacefully, yet the truths he revealed, the compassion he inspired, and the countless lives he freed would remain forever. Thomas often sat quietly beneath Marley's tree, feeling his presence, imagining Marley's gentle eyes and quiet strength beside him still. Justice was forever changed because of Marley, one humble dog who sensed hidden truths and taught an entire community to listen. Through Marley's legacy, truth would never again be hidden or ignored. Justice had a new guardian, with soft eyes, loyal hearts, and paws forever guided by Marley's quiet, everlasting wisdom. In the months after Marley's passing, Thomas poured himself into the Marley Project. Determined to keep his beloved friend's spirit alive, Scout quickly became the organization's symbol, bringing his youthful energy and natural intuition into courtrooms across the country. Yet as each night as Thomas walked home from the office, he couldn't help but feel Marley's absence sharply. One evening, as the first hints of autumn colored the trees around their home, Thomas received an unexpected visitor. Judge Hollister stood quietly on his porch, her expression gentle yet somber. Her presence brought an instant flood of memories, painful yet ultimately healing moments that Marley had set into motion. "May I come in?" she asked softly. Thomas nodded, guiding her to a comfortable seat on the porch. Scout greeted her warmly, sitting gently beside her, a calm presence reminiscent of Marley himself. "I wanted to see you personally," she began quietly. "I owe Marley so much. He didn't just expose my mistakes, he gave me a chance at redemption, something I thought was impossible." Thomas studied her face, recognizing genuine remorse and humility there. "Marley saw something good in you," he responded softly. "He always believed people could change." Judge Hollister nodded thoughtfully. "That's why I'm here. Marley inspired me to do something I never imagined, advocating for those wrongly convicted. I've joined an innocence project, volunteering my legal experience to free others." Thomas felt a wave of warmth hearing this. Marley would be proud, he assured her sincerely. She reached into her pocket, handing Thomas a small envelope. "There's something else. We're hosting a ceremony honoring Marley's contributions, officially recognizing him for his profound impact. It's an unprecedented gesture, but the Judicial Council feels it's important." Thomas opened the envelope, reading the formal invitation. Emotion swelled in his chest. Marley's legacy, already powerful, was about to be immortalized formally within the legal community he had so deeply affected. Days later, at the official ceremony, Thomas stood beside Scout, overwhelmed by the dignitaries gathered to honor Marley. Judges, lawyers, former prisoners, all touched by Marley's quiet bravery, filled the hall, sharing stories, gratitude, and admiration. Judge Hollister spoke passionately, her voice shaking slightly. "Marley reminded us that justice isn't just procedure or punishment, it's compassion, honesty, and a willingness to confront truths, even painful ones. Marley changed our understanding of what justice can truly mean." As the room erupted in heartfelt applause, Thomas felt Marley's presence deeply, a comforting warmth amid his grief. Afterward, countless attendees approached, offering condolences, admiration, and heartfelt stories of how Marley had touched their lives. Late in the evening, as the hall emptied, Thomas stood quietly beside Marley's framed photograph. Scout sat quietly beside him, sensing his emotion. Thomas's eyes filled with tears. a gentle smile forming as he whispered softly, "We did it, buddy. You changed the world." Returning home, Thomas found Jacob waiting outside. Jacob embraced him warmly, understanding Thomas's bittersweet feelings after the ceremony. "Marley's impact is endless," Jacob assured him gently. "I feel him everywhere. Each life he freed, each family he reunited. Marley is with us, always." Thomas nodded quietly, feeling deep gratitude for Jacob's unwavering friendship. Jacob's journey from prisoner to advocate exemplified Marley's profound ability to heal, inspire, and transform lives. Together, they entered Thomas's quiet home, Scout trailing faithfully. Inside, a gentle comfort surrounded them, photographs of Marley's smiling face, memories of his quiet courage. Thomas sat, gently petting Scout, reflecting on the journey that had begun simply a man and his dog, and become something extraordinary. Days became weeks, weeks became months. The Marley Project flourished, each new case reaffirming Marley's legacy. Thomas found joy mentoring young volunteers, teaching them the empathy and patience Marley had taught him. Scout thrived in his role, carrying Marley's torch, growing ever more skilled at sensing hidden truths. One evening, after a successful hearing freeing another innocent client, Thomas and Scout returned home. Sitting quietly beneath Marley's oak tree, Thomas felt a deep, peaceful gratitude. He whispered softly into the gentle twilight, "Thank you, Marley. You changed everything." Scout gently leaned against him, sensing the profound emotion. Thomas smiled softly, embracing Marley's memory, feeling strength and purpose in continuing their shared mission. Marley had planted seeds that continued growing, blossoms of hope and justice reaching ever farther. Then, quietly, he noticed Scout staring intently toward the woods. Thomas followed Scout's gaze, his breath catching. A graceful deer stood silently in the fading light, watching calmly. Scout remained relaxed, serene, sensing no threat, only peaceful recognition. Thomas felt a comforting warmth spread through him. Perhaps Marley's spirit remained close, woven gently into nature, watching over them still. As darkness gently enveloped them, Thomas rose, Scout beside him, feeling Marley's presence deeply, reassuringly. They walked slowly homeward, the deer gracefully fading into shadows behind them, a quiet, gentle symbol of Marley's spirit, forever watching over the world he'd transformed. Inside, Thomas sat quietly with Scout, looking through photographs capturing Marley's life, a testament to a gentle, humble dog whose quiet truthfulness transformed justice itself. Marley's legacy would live eternally, not just through countless freed lives, but through every heart inspired to embrace compassion, courage, and truth. In a world often clouded by cynicism and cruelty, Marley had been a beacon of hope. Now, through Scout and countless dogs like him, Marley's gentle spirit endured, transforming hearts, minds, and justice itself. Thomas rested contentedly, feeling Marley's gentle presence close. Their journey together had reshaped not only countless lives, but their very understanding of truth, compassion, and justice. And through every act of courage, every life freed, Marley's legacy shone ever brighter, guiding humanity toward a more honest, compassionate world. With Scout steadily leading the Marley Project into its next chapter, Thomas and Jacob dedicated themselves fully to expanding the organization's reach. More dogs were trained, more cases reviewed, and more wrongly accused individuals saw justice because of Marley's foundational work. But amid the successes, Thomas couldn't help but feel Marley's absence profoundly, his quiet wisdom and gentle presence a lingering void in Thomas's heart. One chilly morning, as Thomas prepared his coffee in the small kitchen, Scout suddenly began pacing restlessly, whining softly. Thomas glanced up curiously. Scout rarely exhibited anxiety unless sensing something urgent. Before Thomas could approach him, the doorbell rang sharply. Thomas opened the door cautiously, surprised to see Julia standing there, her expression urgent yet uncertain. "Thomas, something unexpected has come up," she began quickly, voice tense. "Her case from years ago, one of Marley's first and long before we started the project. It involves a man named William Reed. Thomas frowned slightly, recalling the name. William Reed had been one of Marley's earliest successes, a difficult case involving hidden truths that Marley had uncovered, freeing William from prison nearly 7 years ago. Julia's expression darkened. William has disappeared. Authorities suspect foul play. We're desperate. Police have no leads. They need Scout's help. Thomas felt a chill spread through him. He'd rarely worked missing persons cases, and Scout's skills had never been tested that way. But the desperation in Julia's eyes left him no choice. "Of course," he said quietly. "We'll help." Within hours, Thomas and Scout were at William's modest apartment, greeted by detectives visibly skeptical about relying on a dog's instincts. Thomas ignored their doubt, knowing Scout had Marley's same quiet resolve. Inside, Scout sniffed carefully around the apartment, immediately growing tense near a back window, whining anxiously. Thomas approached carefully, noting subtle signs, disturbed curtains, a faint smudge of dirt beneath the window frame. "Scout senses distress here," Thomas reported softly. The lead detective, initially dismissive, took careful notes, slowly recognizing Scout's genuine sensitivity. Outside, Scout pulled urgently toward a dense patch of woods behind the apartment complex. Thomas, Jacob, and Julia followed closely, police trailing skeptically behind. Scout paused repeatedly, sniffing the ground, ears flat, a low whine signaling distress. Abruptly, Scout barked sharply, tugging Thomas forward. A flash of fabric beneath thick bushes caught Thomas's eye. A jacket, torn, blood-stained. Thomas's breath caught painfully. William had clearly faced violence. Police quickly took control, marking evidence, now fully trusting Scout's keen instincts. Scout continued tracking methodically through the woods, leading investigators to more clues. Footprints, a discarded glove, traces of William's hurried movements. Hours later, exhausted yet relentless, Scout finally stopped near a shallow ravine, whining softly, looking down anxiously. Thomas's pulse quickened. Police moved cautiously, uncovering a weakened but conscious William Reed, lying injured yet alive. William, overcome with emotion upon seeing Scout and Thomas, whispered hoarsely, "I knew Marley wouldn't forget me." Tears filled his eyes. "Thank you, both of you." William's rescue, credited entirely to Scout's extraordinary intuition, captured widespread attention. Police praised Scout openly, marveling at his swift, accurate tracking, finally understanding Marley's legacy firsthand. In the days after William's safe return, Thomas reflected deeply. Marley had never explicitly trained for rescue operations, yet his intuitive sensitivity now saved another life through Scout. Thomas felt Marley's presence strongly, guiding Scout, reinforcing their shared mission: truth, compassion, and justice. One evening, seated quietly on the porch, Thomas stroked Scout's fur gently, whispering thoughtfully, "You did wonderfully, Scout. Marley would be proud." Scout rested quietly beside him, serene and calm. Thomas looked skyward, whispering softly, "Thank you, Marley. You're still saving lives." Just then, Jacob appeared, holding a small package. He handed it to Thomas quietly. Inside was a beautiful wooden carving of Marley, a heartfelt tribute from William Reed, his heartfelt gratitude expressed through craftsmanship. Thomas held the carving gently, eyes misting. Marley's gentle eyes stared back, warmth captured forever. Jacob sat beside Thomas quietly. Scout's actions proved something crucial today. Marley's legacy goes far beyond the courtroom. It's about protecting and saving lives wherever truth is hidden. Marley taught us something powerful. Justice can be gentle, intuitive, deeply compassionate. Thomas nodded, emotion thickening his voice. "You're right, Jacob. Marley was always more than just our dog. He taught us how to truly listen." Days passed, and the Marley Project grew stronger still. Scout's actions in William's case expanded their mission further, training dogs specifically for rescue and search operations, driven by Marley's intuitive techniques. Marley's legacy thrived. Each life saved another testament to his quiet courage. As Scout trained a new group of enthusiastic pups, Thomas often sat quietly watching, feeling Marley's presence strongly. Marley's gentle wisdom had forever reshaped Thomas's understanding of justice, not as cold legal procedure, but a living force of compassion, truth, and love. One quiet afternoon, as Thomas tended Marley's memorial beneath their favorite tree, Jacob approached softly, Scout trotting happily beside him. Jacob placed a gentle hand on Thomas's shoulder. "Marley's journey never really ended," Jacob reminded him warmly. "It lives forever in every dog trained, every person freed, every heart healed. Marley taught us to never give up, to always believe truth and compassion can change the world." Thomas smiled softly, feeling Marley's spirit close. Scout pressed gently against him, tail wagging warmly. "Thank you, Marley," Thomas whispered gently, voice trembling slightly. "Your legacy will live forever." As twilight deepened, Thomas stood quietly, feeling profound gratitude and peace. Marley's spirit, now embodied in Scout and countless others, lived powerfully, quietly guiding justice toward compassion, truth, and genuine humanity. Thomas walked slowly homeward, Scout loyally beside him. The Marley Project flourished, rooted deeply in Marley's gentle spirit, forever proving that justice, guided by quiet courage and compassion, could truly heal a fractured world. As the Marley Project's legacy flourished, Scout's remarkable abilities continued capturing hearts nationwide. Inspired by Marley's gentle courage, dozens of dogs had now joined the cause, each trained meticulously to sense truths, comfort victims, and support justice in profound, transformative ways. Yet Thomas always ensured the original vision remained true to Marley's memory: humble, honest, and compassionate. On a peaceful evening, beneath Marley's favorite oak tree, Thomas and Jacob quietly reflected on their journey. Scout lay contentedly nearby, supervising several playful puppies now eagerly training for their roles in courtrooms and rescues alike. Jacob watched thoughtfully, breaking the comfortable silence. "Can you believe how far we've come, Thomas? Marley was just your dog. Now he's a national symbol of justice." Thomas nodded, emotion warming his voice. "I never imagined Marley's legacy could grow this way. He inspired countless lives, including mine." Jacob smiled gently. "And mine. He gave me freedom and purpose. Marley truly changed the world." Thomas gazed skyward, whispering softly, "I just wish Marley could see this now. He'd be so proud." Jacob placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. "I think Marley does see this. His spirit lives in Scout, in all these dogs, and in every heart Marley touched. He's with us always." Thomas felt deep gratitude at Jacob's words, watching as Scout nuzzled the young trainees affectionately, gently passing Marley's legacy forward. A soft voice interrupted their thoughts. Julia approached, carrying an envelope with a government seal. "Thomas," she began warmly, "this arrived today. An invitation. They want Scout to visit Washington, D.C. The Marley Project is being honored nationally for its contributions to justice." Thomas opened the letter, heart swelling with pride. Marley's quiet courage had reached the highest levels of government. Scout's attendance would mark an unprecedented recognition for justice programs using trained animals. Weeks later, Thomas, Jacob, Julia, and Scout arrived at the nation's capital, warmly welcomed by dignitaries, activists, and media alike. The ceremony was held at the National Justice Memorial, attended by officials and families Marley's legacy had directly impacted. During the ceremony, Scout's quiet dignity resonated deeply, his gentle behavior visibly touching attendees. Thomas was asked to speak briefly, stepping to the podium with emotion thickening his voice. "Marley started as just my companion, but he became much more. He taught us justice isn't just about evidence and rules. It's compassion, truth, and humility. Marley showed us humans aren't the only guardians of justice. Sometimes, a gentle dog can lead the way." Applause filled the hall, a heartfelt tribute to Marley's extraordinary life. Scoutim, sensing Thomas's emotion, pressed comfortingly against him, illustrating Marley's gentle lessons perfectly. Afterward, Thomas met countless supporters, lawmakers eager to sponsor reforms, families reunited because of Marley, even international visitors inspired to implement similar programs worldwide. Marley's legacy had grown into a global movement, sparking a transformation in how justice systems viewed empathy, truth, and compassion. That evening, beneath the stars, Thomas stood quietly at the memorial dedicated to Marley and Scout, unveiled earlier that day. Carved gently into stone was Marley's familiar image, a simple inscription beneath, "Justice, truth, compassion, forever inspired by Marley." Thomas knelt, placing his hand gently on the stone, whispering softly, "You changed everything, Marley. The world finally understands what you tried teaching us all along." Scout sat quietly beside him, a comforting presence in the quiet night. Jacob and Julia approached silently, standing respectfully close, honoring Marley's memory. Thomas rose, turning gently to them. "We still have much work ahead, but Marley's spirit guides every step." Jacob nodded, smiling warmly. "Marley's legacy will never fade. It's become something bigger than us all." As they left together, Scout walked proudly beside Thomas. Marley's gentle lessons carried forward in each quiet step, every heart touched. Thomas knew Marley's impact transcended their lives. Generations to come would remember Marley as the dog who taught justice, true compassion. Returning home, Thomas continued mentoring dogs and volunteers, inspired daily by Marley's humble wisdom. The Marley Project flourished, advocating tirelessly for truth, compassion, and integrity in justice systems worldwide. Years later, beneath Marley's oak tree, Thomas sat quietly, older but filled with gratitude, surrounded by dogs inspired by Marley's legacy. Scout lay beside him, calm and serene. Thomas gazed skyward gently, feeling Marley's presence strongly. "We did it, Marley," he whispered lovingly. "You changed the world more than anyone imagined." And as gentle twilight enveloped him, Thomas felt Marley's quiet spirit watching warmly, forever proud of the compassionate justice they'd shaped together. Marley had been more than just a dog. He was truth, courage, and love personified, forever inspiring humanity toward justice's greatest potential. Many peaceful years passed, and Thomas slowly handed leadership of the Marley Project to younger, passionate advocates, confident that Marley's legacy remained secure. Scout had also aged gracefully, guiding countless younger dogs before finally retiring to spend his days resting comfortably beside Thomas. One gentle spring afternoon, Thomas received an unexpected visitor at the Marley Project's quiet offices, a young woman named Emily Brennan, Jacob's daughter. Thomas greeted her warmly, yet was puzzled by the urgent look on her face. Emily's eyes brimmed with a mixture of anxiety and hope. "Thomas, it's about my father," she began quietly. "Jacob's been arrested again, accused of something he absolutely didn't do. Someone set him up deliberately, knowing his past would cast suspicion immediately." Shock gripped Thomas's heart. Jacob had spent years dedicated to justice, helping free innocent people. How could this have happened? Emily continued desperately, voice trembling. "We've done everything to prove his innocence, but nothing works. The evidence seems ironclad. We need Scout. Please, Thomas, we have no one else." Thomas hesitated, glancing toward Scout, peacefully sleeping beside his chair. Scout was old, frail now. Asking more from him felt cruel. Yet, Jacob had always been there for Thomas, and the stakes had never been higher. Scout woke slowly, sensing Thomas's tension, lifting his head gently. Their eyes met, a deep, silent understanding passing between them. Thomas knelt beside Scout softly. "Scout, Jacob needs us. Do you have one more left in you, buddy?" Scout slowly rose, tail wagging gently but determinedly, clearly signaling he understood. Thomas nodded firmly, turning back to Emily. "We'll help." "Scout won't fail Jacob." The trial drew massive attention. Jacob Brennan, the celebrated advocate, accused again. Media frenzy surrounded the courthouse, skepticism rampant given Jacob's past. Inside, Scout moved slowly beside Thomas, quietly alert, as Jacob sat pale, visibly aged by anxiety. The prosecution's case seemed flawless, DNA evidence, witnesses claiming Jacob's involvement. Yet Thomas knew Jacob's character intimately. His heart couldn't accept Jacob's guilt. Then, during the prosecution's final witness, a former associate named Darren Collins testified fiercely, claiming Jacob confessed involvement. Scout sat calmly until Darren's voice rose emphatically. Suddenly, Scout barked sharply, a startling interruption silencing the court. Judge Marcus Bailey, still presiding, remembered Marley vividly, leaning forward. "Mr. Harris, Scout senses deception?" Thomas stood, voice steady. "Yes, Your Honor." "Scout has just signaled clearly that Mr. Collins is lying," Darren faltered, visibly shaken. Prosecutors objected vehemently, but Judge Bailey allowed Scout's reaction, recalling Marley's flawless accuracy years prior. Pressure intensified as Thomas pleaded, "Your Honor, Jacob Brennan is innocent. Scout's reaction confirms deception in this critical testimony." Judge Bailey paused deeply. "Mr. Collins, you realize the gravity of perjury. Is your testimony truthful?" Darren, cornered, visibly trembled, finally breaking. "No," he admitted painfully. "I was forced. Someone threatened my family unless I lied. Jacob Brennan is innocent." Gasps filled the courtroom, emotions exploding. Jacob broke into relieved sobs, clutching his daughter tightly. Thomas hugged Scout lovingly, heart racing with relief. Justice had prevailed again, miraculously, through Marley's lasting legacy. Yet suddenly, Scout wobbled gently, collapsing softly beside Thomas, breathing shallow. Thomas knelt immediately, stroking Scout gently, realizing with painful clarity Scout had given his last energy protecting Jacob. Tears filled Thomas's eyes, voice breaking softly. "Thank you, Scout. You saved him. You carried Marley's legacy to the end." Scout rested his head gently on Thomas's lap, eyes softly closing. Jacob, deeply emotional, approached slowly, voice thick. "Scout, you saved my life, just like Marley did. You've always been my guardian angel. Rest now, you've earned peace." Scout sighed gently, breathing slowing, surrounded by loving hands and warm voices. Scout's passing was peaceful, dignified, filled with love and gratitude. Thomas cradled Scout softly, tears falling freely, yet feeling profound comfort. Scout had completed his journey perfectly, upholding Marley's legacy to his final breath. Outside, headlines erupted again. Justice Dog's final act, heroic courtroom rescue. Scout was mourned deeply. His quiet courage celebrated nationwide. Marley's legacy now encompassed Scout, forever remembered as the dog whose final act secured freedom once more. Thomas and Jacob buried Scout lovingly beside Marley beneath their oak tree, marking the grave tenderly. Scout, faithful guardian, protector of truth. In the following months, Thomas and Jacob worked closely, inspired deeply by Marley and Scout's profound courage. They testified nationwide, advocating laws strengthening compassion and transparency in justice systems, permanently altering judicial practices. On a serene afternoon beneath their beloved oak tree, Jacob spoke gently. "Thomas, Marley, and Scout showed us what justice truly means. Never punishment alone, always compassion, truth, courage." Thomas nodded warmly. "They taught us justice is rooted in our hearts, guided by empathy. We'll honor their memory forever." As gentle twilight descended, both men sat quietly, feeling Marley and Scout's spirits strongly present. Their journey together had transformed countless lives, reshaping justice, teaching humanity compassion. Marley's quiet courage had grown into a profound legacy, forever echoing in justice's renewed, compassionate heart. The dogs had guided humanity forward, proving justice, driven by compassion and truth, could indeed change the world. Years later, on a calm, golden autumn evening, Thomas and Jacob walked slowly together beneath Marley and Scout's oak tree. The quiet rustling of leaves whispered gently in the twilight, carrying memories of two extraordinary dogs who had reshaped justice forever. The Marley Project had blossomed beyond imagination, now a thriving global initiative dedicated to truth, compassion, and integrity in judicial systems everywhere. Jacob knelt softly, placing fresh flowers beside Marley and Scout's memorial. "I think of them every day," Jacob admitted quietly, emotion thickening his voice. "Marley gave me freedom. Scout gave me redemption. They changed my life." Thomas nodded warmly, kneeling gently beside him. "They taught us that justice isn't found only in law books or courtrooms. Justice lives in our hearts, guided by empathy, honesty, and compassion. Marley and Scout showed us a kinder, truer path, one that transformed not only our lives, but countless others around the world. Jacob stood slowly, gazing thoughtfully at the horizon. Do you remember the first day Marley walked into Judge Hollister's courtroom? No one believed a dog could sense truth. Yet, look what he accomplished. Thomas smiled fondly. That was Marley's greatest gift, quiet courage, gently challenging what we believed possible. He taught us humans aren't alone in our quest for justice. Sometimes our greatest allies have 4 paws and unconditional hearts. The Marley Project continued thriving, training generations of truth-sensitive dogs who freed thousands wrongfully imprisoned, comforted countless victims, and inspired global judicial reforms prioritizing compassion and integrity. Marley's gentle legacy now shaped justice worldwide. One warm summer afternoon, a new building opened at the Marley Project headquarters, named proudly the Marley and Scout Center for Justice. Dignitaries, former prisoners freed by Marley's legacy, supporters and volunteers celebrated the powerful symbolism. Thomas Combs, older now but deeply content, spoke softly to the crowd gathered. Marley and Scout showed us that justice must always be rooted deeply in compassion, truth, and empathy. Their legacy reminds us all, never underestimate the quiet courage of those who sense truths hidden beneath surface appearances. Marley taught me that justice often wears the gentlest face, one filled with unconditional love. As applause echoed, Jacob placed a comforting hand on Thomas's shoulder. Thomas's voice trembled softly, emotion filling his words. Today, Marley and Scout's legacy is secured forever, thriving through each dog trained, each life freed, each heart inspired to seek truth and compassion. Thank you for believing in their mission, for believing that justice, guided by love and empathy, truly heals our world. Afterward, beneath the gentle twilight, Thomas sat quietly beside Marley's memorial, reflecting deeply on their incredible journey. He whispered softly, "You did it, Marley, you changed everything. The world finally understands your message." Just then, a gentle breeze whispered through the leaves, brushing softly past Thomas, filling him with comforting warmth. He felt Marley's presence deeply, a quiet reassurance that Marley's spirit lived on eternally, forever guiding hearts toward compassionate justice. Jacob approached softly, sitting beside Thomas. Marley and Scout's journey changed countless lives, including ours. I never imagined all those years ago how one dog's quiet bravery would reshape justice itself. Thomas smiled softly, gazing skyward gently. Marley taught us the power of empathy, the quiet courage of compassion. He proved justice's greatest strength comes from the heart. Jacob nodded warmly, smiling fondly. Marley's legacy lives forever now, in Scout, in every dog trained, in every heart touched by their compassion. They showed us justice isn't merely about law, it's about humanity. As the stars brightened above, Thomas felt deep peace. Marley's spirit would forever guide justice toward compassion, integrity, and truthfulness. Marley had been more than a dog. He had become justice's greatest guardian, gently inspiring humanity's highest ideals. Jacob stood gently, helping Thomas rise. Together they walked slowly homeward, confident Marley's legacy would flourish eternally, guiding countless generations toward justice's truest meaning, compassionate, empathetic, loving. Thomas whispered softly into the night, "Thank you, Marley. Your gentle courage changed the world." And as gentle darkness surrounded them, Marley's spirit watched warmly from above, forever proud of the compassionate legacy he'd inspired, an everlasting testament to truth, courage, and unconditional love. If this heartwarming journey of Marley and Scout inspired you, please like and share this video. Subscribe to our channel to experience more extraordinary stories of justice, compassion, and the incredible bonds between humans and animals. Has an animal ever profoundly impacted your life? Share your story in the comments below, and don't forget to watch our next emotional video.